Committee Room 29. Sound.
Okay, members, so that is us now in public session for today's meeting of the Education Committee. Usual housekeeping. First of all, advise members that the committee meeting will be broadcast and recorded throughout Parliament buildings and online, and advise those in the public gallery that they're welcome to use mobile devices as long as they're in airplane mode and that all devices are muted. You can connect to the Assembly Wi-Fi in the gallery, and password details for that are available in the gallery rules. It's not permitted to take photographs or record any part of the meeting. So that's all as standard. So that takes us to item 1 on the agenda, and it's apologies. So we don't have any apologies, but we do have a few members joining virtually, just so we can note that Kathy, Danny and Cara are all joining virtually today. Which moves us on then to item 2, Chairperson's business. After a busy week with that last week, I have nothing to raise at this stage at item 2. Oh, sorry, does that come through on the table papers? We'll deal with that in correspondence. There's some correspondence in table papers from the Belfast-wide Early Years project, which we'll just raise at that stage. Item 3 then is declaration of interests. I'm going to, I know it's a standing one, but just given the briefing we had on down the agenda specifically covering issues of school governance, just wanted to note I am a governor at Killinchy Primary School. If any other members want to declare, David?
Wife's governor at Grosvenor Grammar and at Mitchell House.
Chairperson of Harville Primary Board of Governors, Chair.
No other declarations. If anything arises, members can indicate as normal. So item 4 then is matters arising, and there are a few bits to highlight on this one. So the first one, if Cara is able to come in, I just want to highlight, and it is in table papers for members. So Cara had brought a stakeholder contact to the committee's attention, the Bourne Education Trust. So that should be in your table papers. Happy to invite Cara just to speak to that to start with, and then we can make a decision as a committee if we want to do anything with that. Cara, are you able to come in?
Kathy had a declaration of interest.
Okay.
Apologies, Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you're through now. That's us.
Brilliant. Is this just on matters arising?
It is. It's just on the stakeholder you'd brought to the committee's attention.
Brilliant. Thank you. Sorry, we weren't let in there. Yes, I just thought I'd raise it with the committee. I had the chance to speak with the Russell Education Trust, which kind of looks at identifying how we can utilise artificial intelligence and make personalised learning lessons, particularly to help those children who have special education needs. So basically tailored work programs, and you will see attached in our tabled papers just some of the documents that they sent me to provide a little more evidence around that and some research as well. I'm just really mindful of how stretched our teachers are with workloads and how things like lesson plans, AI can really, really help. And they said, there was one teacher could do a year of lesson plans in less than 2 hours by utilising AI. So I just thought maybe we should be looking not entirely to technology for answers, but just identifying where solutions are and how we can move them forward.
Okay, thanks for that, Cara. So look, I'm happy to open it up to members for any views. I mean, I am no issue whatsoever in engaging. I think I have it as the email as the Bourne Education Trust. Is it the Russell Education Trust, Cara?
Apologies, I misspoke. You're right.
It is Bourne, so that with the Education Trust. I mean, at this stage, I'd be happy to float the idea of getting a written briefing from them on that. But perhaps the material Cara's provided is substantial enough on that. So, I'm happy to open up to members if we have a view, if we would want to invite them in. Peter, you wanted to come in?
Yep. It's not Jason Bourne.
Don't believe so, but
got it enhanced. Okay, so look,
That's my knowledge.
Very good. You would maybe like Jason Bourne. I have no issue. I'm right with you on this one, Chair. I suppose the only thing I would say in terms of lesson plans, I mean, my background is in education, is actually designing a lesson. I know this isn't what you're saying, Cara, but there's a line to sort of navigate here. The actual designing of lessons and lesson plans is a skill that you build up, and it's really important for teachers to have that. I suppose my only thing in the back of my head really is that is a very useful skill for teachers obviously to acquire, and I know that AI is brilliant in a whole range of ways and can be very useful in a whole range of ways. Sometimes it replaces things that actually we should do, so we learn that skill, so that if AI breaks, we still have the skill and we can still function. That would be the only thinking I would have on what's been shared so far. Happy to hear more about it, though, Chair.
So, I mean, I think at this stage, the theme of AI will, I think, keep cropping up in the education space in terms of what we want to do with it. It might be something that the committee does want to look at down the line in terms of further evidence sessions, maybe to hear maybe teaching unions feel appropriate in terms of the impact on balancing that workload saving angle, but also with you don't want to de-skill teachers either. So there is a real balance there, and also around some of the real opportunities and the risks that come with AI. So perhaps it's something down the line as the forward work plan allows that if members were agreed that we could look at maybe a few evidence sessions around AI in the education space. But I would suggest that might not be in the short term. I don't know if any members are we agreed to consider that, but as maybe down the long finger a little bit, would that be? Are we agreed?
Yep.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Next item there in matters arising, I'll just bring the Deputy Chair in really after just a brief introduction. So the Deputy Chair has notified the committee of his intention, or he has launched a private members bill consultation on workforce in the Irish medium sector. So I mean really just to hand over to Pat just to speak to that, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, well, it's fairly straightforward. I mean, there has been a big expansion within the Irish medium sector over the last number of years. If you take, for example, College First Year, which was the first post-primary Irish medium, and there are now only two, but it underwent a major refurb and redevelopment about 6 or 7 years ago, I think, and it had a capacity for 550 pupils. I was in with the principal there a couple of months ago, and by September this coming year, they expect the number to be over 1,000. So, and one of the difficulties with the expansion, and there has been a similar increase in numbers in Gael College Jagura, the other post-primary school in Dungimmon, there is a shortage of teachers of specialist subjects like science, technology, maths and so on. So there needs to be some planning done to ensure teachers for those subjects with ability in the Irish language are recruited. And there's also a problem with support staff, mainly in the allied health sector, speech and language therapists, behavioural therapists, and even educational psychologists and so on, because many of these children are coming into the Irish medium sector with Irish as their first language. Their parents speak Irish, that's their first language. And so they're having to change to another language if they're having to deal with speech and language or even educational psychology. So the aim of this bill is to sort of put an obligation on the department to ensure that there is a strategy. The DUP are wrecking the place today.
Apologise, Chair and Deputy Chair.
So that the department has a clear strategy and a plan to ensure that the Irish medium sector isn't damaged by the fact that they can't recruit teachers in those particular subjects that are necessary. So that's basically it.
Also, thank you, Deputy Chair. Nick, we've heard a lot of evidence to this committee around all of those challenges. I think CNG have produced a lot of research and QUB involved with that around those issues. So I think it'll be really interesting to see what comes forward from that PMB and for the committee to get the opportunity to engage with it. So thank you for that, Deputy Chair. Anyone else want to add any comment at this stage? Are we happy to move on? No. Okay. Third item then, just in matters arising, was Michelle Guy had sent some suggestions through for additional considerations in the forward work plan, which I continue to encourage all members to do or to raise it in this forum. Michelle, do you want to speak to those, or are happy those be noted?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy that they're noted unless anybody wants to ask me about why I've put any of them down. Yeah, it was just, you kind of getting my brain dump there, guys, of just stuff that I thought would be interesting to me to see on committee. If others disagree, I understand. I think it's something we talked about at our planning session, really, so I was just being diligent and following up, really. So yeah, if people are content, I'd love to see some update on most of those, if that's okay.
That's great. And look, I was certainly, from my perspective, pleased to see a good SEN focus there. I think from our briefing last week from EA, I think we were all left that there was an awful lot more work to do in that space. So hopefully we will be able to take all of that forward. Any other comments at this stage, or move on?
If I just come in, happy to support all the stuff that Michelle has down there, no issue with any of it. Just in terms of how we get things onto the forward work plan, when we had that meeting, I'd mentioned educational psychology in particular, and I followed this up separately out of committee, but Ed Psych and speech and language. And speech and language is primarily a health. There are obviously operational teams that work, SLT teams that work with Ed Psych, I can't quite remember the name of the group.
Local impact teams.
Local impact teams. And I was wondering, I would like to see maybe someone from health come, maybe a senior official from health who will talk about the detail behind some of those, those teams, what they're doing, what the level of resourcing is in terms of bodies on the ground and what they are doing. Because I think both educational psychology and speech and language are mission critical. And Pat just flagged up in terms of the Irish medium sector. Do I need to write to? Is that okay?
If it's noted in committee proceedings, consider it absolutely noted. And look, I think there's been agreement when that's been raised before on Ed Psych, that's very much
just to get that SLT thing. And I know that it's a little more blurred between EA and health, but I would like someone maybe from health to be here.
I think if this was maybe mentioned last week, perhaps, but we have our concurrent meeting with health coming up, so we have the Chief Allied Health professional attending that committee, which I think is a really good opportunity to start those conversations around how the workforce planning and health interacts with those local impact teams. So I'm in absolute agreement with you. I think we can change the structures all we want, but if the workforce isn't right, the nice structures don't deliver good services if we don't have the people in them. So no, I absolutely agree.
When is that meeting, Chair?
Clark, can you just confirm for me the date of the meeting? It's soon. It is soon.
It's the 19th of February.
19th of February. And that's and we also have the autism examiner there for that. So again, I think that'll be really helpful input from the health side as well. Okay, so that moves us on then to the item 5, which is the draft minutes. So that's
Kathy wanted to come.
Oh yes, apologies. Sorry, Kathy. This is I'll have to keep asking the clerk to keep me right. I have a terrible blind spot for anyone joining online. Apologies. You wanted to make a declaration of interest. You feel free to come in there.
Just before that though, just on Peter's point there, and I know we have talked about this a few times in committee before, but I just feel like every time we're talking about these local impact teams, and I know educational psychologists, I don't think we can have any conversation around this without Senko's included in it, because they are now, in my opinion, picking up the pieces when it comes to educational psychologists and I suppose the lack of them and the workload that's onto them. So I don't think we can have any conversation without including them in it if possible as well. And sorry, yes, I do want to declare an interest. I know Cara had said we couldn't get online for that item. It's just further on down under item 8. I know the department's briefing, a lot of it's around the role of governance, and it's just to declare that I have recently become a board of governor of a local school as well. So just to have that on record, please.
No, that's fine, and that we'll make sure that's noted. And on the issue around Senko's again, I think you've raised that previously, and I'm in complete agreement. We need Senko's at the table for this, and I know that the clerk is trying to engage with any local contacts that members can suggest around getting Senko evidence to committee. So absolutely agreed. And I think there's an awful lot more engagement on those lits and all of the other issues that we know are very live in relation to SEN and SEN transformation. So we'll keep those coming, and I think we'll have lots of evidence sessions coming up on those issues. So back to item 5, just the draft minutes there, and that's of our meeting of the 15th of January. It should be at page 8 of your packs. Are members in agreement that that's a complete and accurate record of proceedings? You agreed?
Agreed.
Okay. So that brings us on to our first evidence session. So I think our witnesses are here if they want to take a seat so that we can start that briefing session. So it is another evidence session on our RSE inquiry, and I just want to highlight, just while they're getting seated, we had hoped to have Professor Reynolds joining us today, but unfortunately at short notice Professor Reynolds had to withdraw, wasn't able to make today's session, so we will be following up to see if any further written briefings can be provided. So disappointing, as I think I was certainly very keen to hear some evidence around the Welsh context that has been raised in discussions. You've sort of skirted around the edges of the Welsh system and the particular the court case that is very relevant to RSE around parental opt-outs. So it would have been very interesting to have that briefing, but unfortunately couldn't be accommodated today. We also have some material that has come in on the inquiry at tabled papers, which you can refer to. We have no further capacity for written briefings on our forward work plan, but those items are being added to the inquiry. And those organisations are obviously very free to provide full written briefings should they wish to. So that came through from the Women's Rights Network and from UCL, who provided a range of links. So Peter, do you want to come in?
Thanks very much, Chair. No, it was just on the Women's Rights Network. I believe this isn't historic. This goes back to early December, and I think that time we said there was a debate. Alliance for Choice had written in and said we want to have oral evidence, and at the time I think the committee agreed that if we were going to have Alliance for Choice giving oral evidence, that we would write out, and I believe the clerk obviously did write out. It's my understanding, just from the email that we got back from the Women's Rights Network, that they have stated that they will come provide oral evidence. It'd be my view that to honour what we said at that time, that if we can put these folk in at some point, then I think we should, given the fact that we made that commitment to Alliance for Choice and honoured it. We made the same commitment to these folk, and albeit they have come back late, and I accept that, Chair.
I think that would be my response on this at this stage, and like apologies to Parenting Focus. I thought we were going to get to your briefing quicker than we are. Apologies, but my feeling on that is that there was plenty of time given for an opportunity to offer that presentation, and we are now we only have one further week of evidence scheduled. That's already an extension to the committee's time. The feedback has been very clear that members have been frustrated by the amount of time that the inquiry has taken, so I really don't think we can justify moving on for any further written evidence. Would be very, very happy for them to provide a written briefing as full and as detailed as they wish, and we can certainly have a full discussion on that at committee when that lands, but my sense is that the views of the committee are that we are bringing the inquiry to a close, and that good time was given for them to make that approach around a written briefing. So that would be my position on it. Happy to open that up to other members. Does anybody else have another view? David?
Sure, and I'm one of those who's expressed at different times frustration that it is played out, and I think there's and that was never, I've always said, it's not necessarily aimed at yourself or our clerk or anyone like that. It's I think a general frustration, because there is a tension sometimes between probably if we're going to hear a full spectrum of views and against what the time that takes up. I probably would support Peter's proposal on that basis, that I think that this is another voice of sort of a that I don't think has necessarily been represented as yet, and feel it might be useful to have that input to ensure that we have that full spectrum as much as we can. So on that basis, I would probably support Peter's proposal.
No, that's noted. So Deputy Chair, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I have no difficulty here in Alliance for Choice. I mean, they could have been here previously. My view would be that, with no disrespect to the witnesses sitting here at the minute, we're not going to hear anything new. All the main issues have been ventilated at committee here, and we all know which are the issues that each of us find contentious or otherwise. And again, no disrespect to Alliance for Choice, I don't think we would hear anything new from them either.
Alliance Choice, just we've heard from them. This is Women's Rights Network.
It's a women's. Sorry,
Just for clarity.
yeah, it's a women's rights network that we're talking. We had Alliance for Choice, but this is an email that the women's.
Beg your pardon.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
Just for clarity.
But it's the same argument.
I know. I
Yeah, no, accept that.
Chair, could
I would ask we bring this to a close fairly rapidly.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I
Just
actually
take a
accept.
committee view,
Sure,
on
I accept exactly what Pat said. I actually think these are women who have a very particular view. I think we've heard a lot
Yes.
on some issues that the Deputy Chair has just very succinctly suggested what those might be. I think we have not heard from a women's group that actually have these views. And I would ask the committee to find a time to listen to these views and consider them.
So look, I want to be very clear about my position. I have no interest in shutting down the range of views, and I think the committee has made a real effort actually to hear very broadly, and we have cast the net very wide, and we have invited groups to attend, not all who have taken that opportunity up. I do feel that we did make an approach back in 2024 on the back of correspondence, and we're only now getting this in, at this late stage in January when we are drawing the inquiry to a close. My view is it wouldn't really matter to me which organisation was approaching us. We have made a very clear decision. This is already an extended timescale for the committee, and I think we have to honour that decision. We didn't say that it would be a movable feast, that we could, depending on what correspondence came in, we would extend further and further. We haven't hidden our inquiry. Its timescales have been out there and very clear. So that would be my view. If there is a desire to divide committee on that, happy to take a vote. But my sense is, unless there's any other views, that it might maybe Peter and David taking a particular view and others taking the view that we seek a written briefing from this organisation.
Just to concur, I think we had a detailed discussion on this and we made a decision. And I agree with you, it's not about who's asking, it's just that this is the stage we're at the inquiry. Those views are not being censored from the committee or from the inquiry. They're just not going to be heard in oral evidence, and I think they'll still be considered, and I think that that's fair and reasonable at this stage of the inquiry. It would not be at another stage, but at this stage I think that's where we've reached our decision previously.
And I would be on that point very happy should they send a written briefing in, that when we discuss the key themes arising from from our evidence, that given that they may not have been able to be facilitated with an oral briefing, that we set aside specific time to address what came in their written briefing, and to acknowledge that and have that on the record, so again very happy to do that. So my proposal is that we seek a written briefing from the Women's Rights Network, given the stage we are at in the inquiry process. So can I just ask if there is agreement on that, or if there is a dissenting view? So no, not agreed.
Dissenting view. I would really like, and I appreciate, Chair, that we have done our best to try and have balance in the evidence we've got. I just think this women's group would provide evidence that we haven't yet heard, and I would like to hear it orally if we can.
No, I do understand that. I mean, I recall there have been committee sessions where you actually chased up, have those organisations come back, and we had to say no, they haven't. So I mean, I don't think there's any suggestion that opportunity hasn't been provided. So I think on that we have to. We're already. My view is pragmatically we've extended the timescale. So, but it looks
Could
like
I just make
Deputy Chair?
one quick point for accuracy, and I stand corrected if I'm wrong here, but I think earlier on you said there was no more space or no more room for written briefings. I think you meant oral briefings.
Oral in terms of the record. Apologies. That's there was no more space for oral briefings. Yeah, that's important to have that correct. Okay. Well, on that basis, so we move to vote then on that. Okay, so the proposal is that we seek a written briefing from the Women's Rights Network on the basis that the committee had made a formal decision at the point at which we were closing the inquiry. So could I just ask all those who are agreed to indicate?
Agreed.
Okay. Anyone who's not in agreement to indicate? Have we a record of that? Look. So if you can just confirm how the votes were.
Chair, can I ask a question?
Yes.
If, and forgive me because it's the first experience I've had of this, if there's a proposal on the table, would you not have to take that first before you would make your own proposal?
In terms of your proposal?
Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't sure. I wasn't aware you'd made it as a formal proposal. I thought it was just expressing a view on how you
Right.
thought. Okay. If you would,
I think that would be preferable, actually.
if you would
Yeah.
like to make
To
a
go
formal
with.
proposal,
Then I will make
yeah.
a formal proposal, that we write back to the Women's Rights Network and ask them to come in expeditiously for an oral briefing in front of the Education Committee.
Can I ask all members to indicate who has agreed? And anybody who is wanting to express an alternative view and vote no on that proposal, can I ask?
No.
I've heard a no from Danny and indications from Kathy and Cara. So, Clerk, are you able just to confirm the outcome of the vote on Peter's proposal?
Yeah, so Peter proposed that the committee expeditiously invite an expeditious briefing from the Women's Rights Network, and there were 2 ayes in favour of that and 7 noes against that proposal.
Okay. Are we all agreed that is that matter resolved? Okay. So, sincere apologies to Parenting Focus, who have been patiently waiting to bring their briefing. I had assumed we were going to move through the sort of housekeeping elements of the inquiry a bit more quickly than that. So that does take us to item 7, which is a briefing on the RSE inquiry from Parenting Focus. So you're very welcome here this afternoon, and we thank you for your giving up your time to come to brief committee. So I would just refer members to a briefing from the committee clerk at page 69. And also the submission to the RSE inquiry from Parenting Focus at page 71. So I would like to give you the opportunity. Obviously, you can add to any of the background information here, but we're pleased to have Emma Hitchin here today, who is the Senior Participation and Research Officer with Parenting Focus, and Muriel Bailey, who is the Head of Services and Operations at Parenting Focus. So, as is the normal format for our briefings, we'd invite you to make any initial remarks or presentation of up to 10 minutes, and then we will move into question and answer from there. So I'll hand over to you at this stage, and please feel free to add anything in terms of introductions that is appropriate.
You happy enough, right? I'm going to give our statement, if that's okay. Thank you. Chair and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to address the mini-inquiry into relationships and sexuality education. Parenting Focus is the leading organisation in Northern Ireland advocating for the voice of parents and carers of children. We are dedicated to supporting parents and ensuring their voices are heard in decisions that affect them. We were established in 1979. We were formerly known as the Parents Advice Centre and later Parenting NI, and provide free support through a range of services, including a free phone support line, family support services within the home, various evidence-based programmes and workshops. And our mission is to ensure that parents have access to timely support and information to guide them through their parenting journey. Our vision is of a society where parenting is valued and parents' voices are heard, and every family receives the support that they need. We believe that the best and most effective way to support children is by supporting those who parent them, and we strive to deliver responsive and accessible parenting support and services across the region. With this mission in mind, we will focus today on why comprehensive, age-appropriate and scientifically accurate RSE is vital for children and young people, and why it is equally essential to engage and support parents in this process. We do understand the concerns of parents who may feel uneasy about certain topics. This is why we strongly believe parents must be engaged as partners in RSE. Parents and those with a parenting responsibility have a critical role in their children's development, including shaping their values and their beliefs. By consulting and integrating parents into the curriculum development process, we can demystify the content of RSE and foster collaboration between schools and families. Research such as the Healthy Young Adult Relationship Project, Langdon et al. 2024, and the Jack Trial, Lohan et al. 2022, has shown that when parents are actively involved in RSE, communication between them and children about relationships and sexuality improves. This not only promotes healthier and safer behaviours among young people, but also creates opportunities for families to explore moral, religious issues together. This collaborative approach empowers parents to provide guidance consistent with their values, which ensuring that all children receive the comprehensive, rights-based education they need and deserve. The curriculum should include essential topics such as consent, online safety, body autonomy, and respect for diversity. These are not only educational priorities, but these are essential for our children's safety and well-being. Children who miss out on this learning may be more vulnerable to misinformation or exploitation. Consent education in particular is critical for fostering healthy relationships and addressing societal challenges like domestic abuse and violence against women and girls. As active members of the Online Safety Committee, which undertakes the aims and objectives of the Safeguarding Board for Northern Ireland, we are keen that the curriculum will be future-proofed to ensure the safety of our children and young people in a quickly evolving world. It's also our firm position that the opt-out provision in RSE curriculum shouldn't exist. RSE is a statutory component of the curriculum and should be designed with the full participation of children, young people and their parents to be scientifically accurate, age-appropriate and comprehensive. There is no other subject within the curriculum where parents can withdraw their children from specific elements, and RSE should not be treated differently. Its purpose is to safeguard children and young people by equipping them with the knowledge and the skills to navigate relationships and sexual health responsibly and safely. The legislative and policy framework already supports this. The Northern Ireland Executive Act 2019, the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child recommendations, and the Relationships and Sexuality Education Northern Ireland Amendment Regulations 2023 all mandate factual, evidence-based RSE. These policies highlight that opting out undermines the universal rights of children to access education that provides their health and well-being. This is a matter of safeguarding and the human rights of children and young people, which every parent wants to uphold. The Department of Education has a duty to ensure that all children receive high-quality RSE and that parents are supported to engage with this. Parenting Focus are keen to support the work of schools and policymakers to facilitate this partnership. We would also share our concerns with regards to the consultation processes for their proposals. Notwithstanding the significant response from parents that DE received in their consultation in 2023, they still have a duty under Section 75 of the NI Act 1998, which requires public authorities to have due regard to the need to promote equality of opportunity between 9 equality categories, including persons with, e.g. parents, and persons without dependents. As such, and in accordance with ECNI guidelines or guidance, consultation processes such as this one should ensure that the Department of Education understand the impact of their proposal on parents and carers through direct engagement with them. It is disappointing that the Department did not engage in meaningful discussions with respective groups of parent and carers. To conclude, we urge the Committee to prioritise a framework that ensures every child in Northern Ireland receives the comprehensive RSE they are entitled to. At the same time, we ask that robust mechanisms are established to engage parents, providing them with the information and confidence to support their children as they navigate these vital topics. Thank you for the opportunity to present today, and Parenting Focus is happy to assist further if needed, and Emma and I welcome any questions.
Thank you. Thank you for those initial remarks. I just wanted to start with a broader question, because obviously as a leading parents charity, you get a lot of contact from parents around issues of concern. I just wanted to get an idea in terms of on the issue of RSE, what sort of issues would come through your organisation, what sort of things would be raised in terms of views expressed or concerns, or where parents would want to get support or help?
Our first point of contact when parents would come to Parenting Focus would be through our support line. So those issues can vary very much around RSE, and it's very much in a parent's language. So parents can call us on a daily basis and they may ask us to help them navigate a difficult conversation that may be coming up with their child or young person in relation to sexual education, in relation to something that they may have heard from one of their peers, which is inaccurate information. And maybe parents themselves are embarrassed, they're feeling a little bit below par in how they can navigate that. So they ring up to give them time and space to talk about what that may be. It may be children are talking about gender identity. Parents are feeling really lost in that. They don't want to shut a conversation down, but they certainly want to let their child explore what they're wanting to talk about, but they're not sure what that may or may not look like because it's an unknown. So it varies very much. But it's normally through our support line, and then we have other programmes that parents will maybe use that opportunity to talk to each other during programme sessions about what it's like in individual households.
So would the specific issue of RSE in terms of the provision, would that be something that comes through from parents in terms of contact?
We'll be more on the topic around sexuality, relationships, consent, rather than them ringing up about to talk about specific the RSE curriculum.
What is or isn't happening in school.
We did consult with parents last year in our big parenting survey, which is our generalised parenting survey, where we asked parents their opinion on topics that are of concern to them, and very much coming through in that was RSE as a topic. So things like online safety of our children and young people, and how parents navigate that world that they feel completely lost in, and really the lack of support for them in that. We also have a lot around relationships and those difficult conversations with our children, young people, about access and contraception and things that parents aren't completely comfortable discussing. So parents have been saying, you know, this is a concern of theirs. We also did a significant piece of work around the Ofcom protecting children online, and that very much came through about access to pornography and things like that, that parents just have no clue how to navigate that world. So it was very much a concern of parents, and a lot of the other work we had done not actually focusing on RSE.
In terms of the interaction with schools and parents, so we've heard a lot of evidence, and almost without exception, the academic evidence that we've heard is that RSE works when parents are engaged in it. That has been a theme that has been consistent throughout the inquiry. How effectively do you think schools in Northern Ireland engage with parents? And I know it's very, very broad spectrum, but in terms of the feedback that you receive from parents, how effective is that on the specific issue of RSE curriculum?
That's something that we would very much advocate for. We understand that parental participation in education is one of the main indicators of success, and so it's something that we would advocate for highly. We do hear from both schools and from parents that they find it difficult to engage parents with the RSE curriculum. There's been a lot of misinformation and fear-mongering around the RSE curriculum, especially with the amendment, and I think that has caused great concern for parents. And parents are now at a stage where there is such a fear of RSE, where they nearly think about is the easier option, because they don't know, they can't engage with the curriculum. So we would have real recommendations around that and how schools can engage with their parents in the first instance. So really engaging with them from early on in that process and ensuring that there is none of that misinformation, and quickly addressing any misinformation that has been spread. We also think it is a duty of the department to ensure that those processes are put in place, that the schools are able to do that. And the participation of parents in RSE policies within their schools. So a lot of parents are telling us they're not even aware of what the RSE policy is, and that would be a great starting point, so that there is no chance for misinformation, and parents are very much aware of what's on the curriculum, and really to have that transparent relationship between schools and parents, that they understand what's in the curriculum and they can dispel any of those fears then for parents before their children have had access to it. We also think it would be really good to implement a workshop ahead of any curriculum activities that take place, so parents are aware of what their children are being taught, and they have the chance to talk around that with the schools and look at that in line with the ethos of the school as well. And we feel very much that the curriculum leaves a lot of room to discuss these issues, and the more contentious issues, and they can also be discussed in other subjects such as RE, in line with the ethos of the school. But we feel very much that this provides parents with the opportunity to discuss these difficult conversations. So when we're getting calls to our support line saying we don't know where to go here to get support, hopefully if that was implemented in schools, parents wouldn't get to that point where they feel the need to ring and ask for support around that, and that would really lay the groundwork to have those difficult conversations with their children and young people.
Just finally for me then, in terms of recommendations that you might want to make, I mean, we heard very early on in this inquiry, the EA were very clear that effectively they provide no real support to boards of governors around writing policies, engagement with parents on these issues. They said they're just not resourced to do that. Would you be supportive of more proactive engagement from either EA or department to actually upskill boards of governors and schools to do that parental engagement work, both at policy writing and curriculum engagement level?
We absolutely would. We think that is the only way. This is a journey which parents are fearful of, and we need to bring parents right from the start of that. And we think it really is the duty of the department to provide there has been a change in the curriculum, and the schools, board of governors and the teachers need to be upskilled and to be able to fulfil that. And we absolutely would offer our services. We provide training on engaging effectively with parents, and we would absolutely offer our services on how to do that. But we think that is a vital part of this process and really needs to be done to have a comprehensive RSE within schools.
That's great. Thank you. That's all from me. Deputy Chair, do you want to come in?
Thanks, Chair. And just following on from that, does Parent Focus have much engagement with schools?
Yes, absolutely. So we would engage with schools on a regular basis. We are at the minute in the parental participation for the RAISE programme, so we're engaging with schools all across Northern Ireland. But on a regular basis, we would engage with schools going in to talk to parents or parent groups, to do focus groups. We also run some of our programmes through schools, such as the Summerhill programme.
Yeah. We have a Summerhill programme that's funded by a funder here in Belfast, and that is a cost of living programme that goes into the schools across Northern Ireland, and we deliver that. And we have 2 family support programmes across Strabane in 3 schools up there and 3 in Antrim that we regularly provide services for. So we have worked an awful lot with building that capacity of parents feeling comfortable, being able to communicate with the school team so that parents feel able to actually do that, and obviously the school team are maybe aware that sometimes parents find it hard to come forward and express views. So yes, we would do that regularly.
And in terms of the delivery of RSE, have you had any engagement with schools around that particular issue?
We have delivered a small element of curriculum that we were asked to deliver last year to post-primary schools and up here in Belfast, but it was the schools who had some money and they wanted us to help support them with that.
Actually delivering the curriculum?
Delivering an element of information to young pupils around what early parenting may look like and why that may be something they wanted to focus on and not necessarily being a life choice for them. So it was more an additional part of helping them with the curriculum.
Okay, thanks for that. And the Chair raised the issue of schools engaging with parents. And you've said that Parent Focus would be able to help with that. I suppose logistically, what are we talking about? What would that look like?
Well, there have been suggestions from schools before about parenting hubs within schools, but really we would facilitate that. What we have found that has worked is when we go into school and run our Summerhill programme, we are able to bring the parents in. They then feel comfortable in the school setting. So a lot of the work really that we would do is to help parents feel comfortable within the school environment. A lot of them have had negative experiences themselves and kind of disengage from their children's education. And as you know, the RAISE programme is very much focused on parental engagement in their child's education and raising educational attainment. But we could do that in many ways. One of the things that we have looked at doing is a survey and focus groups within the schools and asking the parents themselves, how would you like to engage with your school? And really to tell them the benefits as well of engaging with their children's education. So a lot of parents are completely unaware of how beneficial that will be for their child until someone goes in and has that conversation with them. So looking at really what we can implement in the school that's going to meet the needs of the parents and the families within the school. And then following on from that and putting in place different interventions that will meet those needs.
Okay, thanks very much. Thank you. Thanks.
Deputy Chair. I'm going to just bring Michelle in a moment. I think just if I could suggest an action arising from this already, I think it would be good to get more information on the Summerhill programme. It sounds like something the committee might be interested in. So if you did have some written information to send in on that, we'd be very happy to receive that. Michelle, you had indicated next.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks very much for coming in today. I'm a fan of your organisation. I was a parenting champion when I first became elected at council, so a lot of experience of working with you, and I appreciate very much what you do. Not wanting to get you maybe to repeat too much, but I know you've already expressed to the Chair a sense of what recommendations, I guess, you would perhaps make in terms of RSE. What would your expectation be in terms of what the outworking of this inquiry ought to be? So what would you want to see after we've completed this process, we've pulled together a report? What do you think would look like progress coming off this in terms of RSE in schools?
I think we would absolutely like to see an element of parental participation involved in that, and really how that is going to work in reality. I think we have already expressed in our statement that we were disappointed that DE didn't undertake a formal consultation process with parents, and as much as we had no formal consultation process with parents, we did meet with the department in October 2023 to express that we thought this was a really important they are key stakeholders in their children's education around RSE. And I think actually the number of respondents that we had, 47% of the respondents to the consultation were parents, so it shows that parents have a real concern around this topic. So I think we were disappointed that the department didn't undertake their statutory duty to consult with parents. So we would like to see parents prioritised in this process. We know parents are really invested in it, and they want the best outcomes for their children and young people. So I think actually the parental participation as a key element moving forward would be something we would really like to see.
And in terms then, I know the department doing some work on curriculum at the minute. Would you feel the evidence base that we'll bring from this inquiry would be helpful to any exploration of RSE in that context?
Yes, absolutely. So we had a look through the curriculum, but looking forward at the revised curriculum, we really believe it needs to be future-proofed, looking at all those things that concern parents. So we hear on a daily basis from parents that they have concerns around online safety, so it's something that we would be very much concerned about. Parents just feel clueless in that space. They don't understand their children. Young people understand a lot more about them than they do. So I think that's something we'd like to see, that the curriculum will be really future-proofed for those changes, bringing into consideration things like AI as well. So things that maybe haven't been considered, that it just needs to be really future-proofed.
Okay. Yeah. And obviously, social media, online world is something we've talked about. It is such an important and scary issue for parents. Specifically around, I guess, toxic male influences online and the effect that that's having, I guess, in radicalising some of our young people, our young men. Is that something that you are hearing from parents? Are they expressing concerns about how to counter some of the stuff that they're hearing, perhaps their young people repeat, that they've got from influences such as social media? And if you want to comment on social media more generally as well, just on the impact that it has and how parents are maybe struggling or otherwise to deal with that challenge.
Absolutely, social media is a minefield, and again, ever evolving, and parents they feel like they can't keep up to date with this. We have had some concerns from parents around male misogyny and the influences that their young men are hearing. We do have certain programs that target aggression. We have a specific program called Walking on Eggshells. Yeah.
And that's a programme that was developed through the University of Galway that we were involved in about 10 years ago, and it's a non-violence resistant programme that is very much for child-to-parent violence, where unfortunately in some homes young people, potentially as young as 10, may be exhibiting aggressive and violent behaviour towards their parents. And we have found through the programmes that we have offered, and a lot of it has been funded under the Assets Recovery Funding, is that the majority, unfortunately, are young boys who are perpetrating violence against their mums. So it's a programme very much initially when we were delivering it was for mothers, because that was the criteria of the funding. However, it has evolved that we now offer it to mums and dads. And it's a programme that's very welcome, and the outcomes are very positive, because it very much puts the control in the home back onto the parent in a very slow, over an 8-week process that we work very closely with the parents. So we would use that programme to help support that element of trying to look at the violence against women and girls, but particularly obviously mums in this instance.
Thank you. David, you'd indicated.
Thanks very much, Chair. And I think useful to say in the context of all of this, because as you say, there's RSE, there's a certain narrative around it at times, which creates fear. I think there's different views on this committee, but I think the vast majority of what you're talking about, I think most of us can agree with in terms of the things that we need to address. And I think that's been reflected, because I'm going to come on to the opt-out and your position on the opt-out. But I think what we've heard so far from, but whether that's representatives of groups that represent people of faith or from third parties and at different places in the spectrum of thought in this, is that opt-out rates are very, very low anyway, and they are especially low whenever there is that engagement with parents and parents become aware of what their children are going to be taught. Does away with some of those myths and fears that they may have about what exactly is being taught. And I think certainly from my position, I think that's definitely best practice in all of this, and something that's really positive to see. But do you not feel that relationship between school and parent, particularly thinking of those who would have concerns over specific elements of RSE, not I don't think many people are going to be violence against women and girls, online harms, that people want to protect their children generally. But where they do have concerns around some of those issues, and you talked about parents being able to, pass on their values to their children and so on, and that being important, do you not feel that from having a starting point of the parent not having any right to decide ultimately what their children are being taught, that sort of undermines that trust and relationship right from the outset, whereby we're going to inform you, we're going to talk to you, but ultimately we're going to teach your child whatever we want to teach it anyway? Obviously that's from the state's point of view, not from yours, but do you understand what I'm saying?
Well, I absolutely understand what you're saying, but I think from our position, this is a comprehensive, scientifically accurate and age-appropriate curriculum which has been mandated, so we see no reason why any parent should be opting their child out of that. I think very much our organisation is based on Article 2 and the parents' right to bring their child up and give them the best start to life, but also we do have to recognise UNCRC Article 5, which does recognise the increasing capacity of the children and young people, and I think when we're looking at the opt-out, there should be no reason, as long as the curriculum is deemed scientifically accurate, age-appropriate and comprehensive, that any parent should be removing them. I think we also have to be conscious that as a child is moving into year 12, they are reaching the age of consent, so they're actually still at that stage where they could be the age of consent, but their parents could be opting them out. But we also think there could be difficulty for a child to then, so for year 12, whenever the child has to also agree to that opt-out, that could cause some contention between the child and parent, and puts a lot of onus on the child to stand up to their parent and say, no, actually, I would like to participate in this. So I think it causes difficulties there for the parent-child relationship, and could actually cause it to be more fractious, if anything.
Oh, there's many things that can be fractious for a parent and child relationship, but ultimately it comes down to the parent's right to parent their child and decide up until the appropriate age, and there'll be discussion around where that is, to parent their child and decide for their child essentially what is appropriate for it. And I think in some of those more controversial issues that it's impossible to have those kind of discussions. We talk often about scientifically accurate, but in terms of having discussions outside of any discussion of values which inform debate, not just here but across the world. I mean, you look at abortion, for instance, is an obvious one, but you can talk about people's different view of sex and gender. And we've had this week, I don't expect you to talk about, we've had this week with Trump coming in, the executive order in the US basically say we only recognise two and so on. And some people will rejoice at that and others will be horrified by it. Mm-hmm. That's the same across the world, and therefore, how do you discuss that in the classroom in a scientifically accurate way whenever it's a contested space? You ultimately end up with one particular view being what's informed to the child without the parent then being able to decide, and that reflects on their ability to hand down those values and beliefs and how they influence those.
I would disagree in that. I think when we look at the curriculum very much provides a space for the scientifically accurate curriculum to be taught, but it also does provide space to discuss everything around that, so the ethical and moral implications. But that's also why we think it is so vital that there is parental participation as part of this process as well, so that the parents are aware of what has been taught in school, and it provides them the opportunity then to talk and discuss their values around these subjects. We do believe, however, though the curriculum is scientifically accurate, so therefore that is not something that can be discussed. This is the current legislation in Northern Ireland, and children need to be informed on that. Our children and young people, we're doing a disservice to them if we're not informing them of that. The school does have their ethos, and there's very much room in the curriculum to discuss around that. There's also another place through the religious education as well where they can discuss that. But I don't believe that this is a parent's right versus a children's right. I think it's very much parents and children on that journey together to discuss the scientifically accurate information and their views and values around that and how they see the world going forward.
There's a fair degree. I'll just finish off with this. Just say I agree with actually the parental engagement. I agree, and I've talked about quite a few times that discussive nature, so we all understand and respect each other coming from different points of view. So I agree with that. I guess the only difference is in terms of the opt-out, and I do feel that it's a contested space in some of these issues that we can't sort of get around that. But thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you, David. Colin, you'd indicate it next.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Emma Muriel, for your time today. I really appreciate it. Just picking up on some of the topics that you think should be included in the curriculum: dignity, bodily autonomy, child protection, online safety, domestic abuse. When it comes to special schools and children in special schools, how do you think RSE should be delivered in special schools? And do you think the curriculum is suitable for children within that special school setting?
Parent Focus would very much advocate for special schools to be in the knowledge and the obviously the skill and expertise behind that. And again, it should be around what they're in conjunction with their parents, but also in conjunction with the Department of Education about what that may look like for particularly what needs are for those children in those schools, because some of the special schools will have a different need of some children to others. So I think that should be very much evolved as that progresses, because that is a totally different probably ask, and some of those children may not this may not be a topic that needs to be discussed with them. Again, that's about knowing your children and what they are capable of actually being involved in.
Again, we would say the parental participation element of that is even more vital in that situation where those children are more vulnerable as well. And should that mean bringing in a third party to discuss those things with parents or with the children themselves, we would absolutely advocate that if they're specialists in that area to do that, then that's the correct process. But again, the parental engagement element of that is even more important whenever you're discussing children who are particularly vulnerable.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Peter, you indicated next.
Thanks very much, Chair, and thanks for your evidence today. And I've worked with Parenting NI in the past, and I know Muriel. I wanted to just pick up on something that sort of David left off on, which is really the sort of ethos and value. And you said in your written statement there that we agree with NIHRC that ethos and value have a role to play in school and, of course, family life, but not in a scientific-based area such as this. And then in your oral evidence, you mentioned sort of fact-based education, and obviously that's come through a few times. So my first question is, do you think there's any areas that are disputed in terms of RSE, or is there do you feel that you have there's a clear curriculum that could be taught that wouldn't be disputed?
No, I absolutely feel there is a clear curriculum that can be taught, and I think it can be done within the ethos of the school and within the family values as well. And I think there is, when we look at the curriculum, there is plenty of opportunity provided within it to discuss these things. I know that looking at the issues such as abortion, there's definitely space to discuss moral implications around that, feelings and emotions moving forward, and how it might impact someone for the rest of their lives. So I think there is due consideration given to those. So I would very much say there should be a standardised curriculum, but which leaves room for those discussions to happen, and that there is space for parents to be very much involved in that. But again, in those particularly contentious topics, we would advocate strongly that parents should be involved in that from the very beginning, be very much aware of what their children are being taught, and see how they can be involved in that discussion, and then that those discussions can be facilitated outside the classroom and the family home, so that they have the opportunity to discuss their own family values and their opinions on how they can support their children going forward.
Okay, so you believe it could be taught in that way? I mean, surely if you took a look at the news or at X or in the world around us, and my colleagues mentioned the American election, I mean, there's clear dispute about the simplest of questions, you know, so like what is a woman, for example? That's not an agreed area. And I'm not going to put you under pressure by saying, you know, what you think on that. That's the simplest question in the world, which people have different views on, and you're sort of saying there's an answer to that. Now maybe there is an answer to that. That's not for the committee to decide. But even a question as simple as that is disputed. So how could that be taught in a school? If somebody said, well, you know, what is a woman?
I think what we're very much saying is that the school should facilitate the conversations around that and support all of their children regardless of their views, and support the parents of the children. So, you know, regardless of what anyone thinks is right or wrong to that question, we're saying the child should be supported in what they think, and supported through whatever they're going through. And really our role is to facilitate helping the parent do that. So we would have calls onto our support line about issues around that, and parents are very much lost in how to handle these situations. But we're saying, you know, that the curriculum facilitates those conversations, but we need to support all of our children and young people regardless of their experience.
And also within that environment, I think it's important to stress that it's within a safe environment, and yes, there'll always be input from others that some people will or won't agree with. There'll be throwaway comments that are totally inaccurate, but if you're in a safe environment and your parents are supporting you to be in that environment, then you would hope that the teacher who's facilitating that has got the skills to actually, yes, enable young people to explore things that they may have heard, but that may be inaccurate, but they're in still a safe space, and they're hopefully leaving with, whether they all agree with that, they're still leaving with hopefully a consensus of an understanding, and that's what we're advocating for, that parents are knowing what their children are actually discussing then in that classroom setting.
I think, I don't disagree with that. I think that's really important. What you said there at the end, that, you know, there's a safe space for kids who are in whatever situation. I think that's really, really important. I think my question was just pointing to the fact that actually I don't believe that we can address RSE just on facts, because I've given you an example where, just the simplest example in the world, where fact is disputed. You know, people have different views. What we believe about that question is down to a degree our ethos and value, which you mentioned in your written evidence. I think our ethos and value in our schools is really, really important. And just to finish, I mean, and the Deputy Chair reflected this earlier, and we've heard it a lot in this committee, there are lots of things that the committee agree on, really important things, and some of which you've touched on around consent and violence against women and girls and safeguarding and so forth. There are other things that we don't, and probably those are more to do with the ethos and value that perhaps we have. But further than that, I do not believe that when people use the phrase scientifically accurate, age appropriate and comprehensive, I have a different view as to what is scientifically accurate, and so I wouldn't therefore agree with perhaps someone else who would say, you know, that's obviously that. I say, well, it's not that, it's that. And I'm just, you know, my question to you was just trying to illustrate the fact that I do believe that it's very hard to define what scientifically accurate, age appropriate and comprehensive RSE actually is, and find agreement around that. Sorry, Emma, go ahead.
I think if we do look at the two areas that parents can opt their children out of, so early access to pregnancy prevention and abortion, there is nothing in that really that can be contested as scientifically inaccurate. So I think from our point of view, the two areas where we feel there should be no opt-out, there actually isn't anything there. Now there is still space around that to discuss the moral and implications as well. And again, we are very keen to advocate that families will have the opportunity and the space then to discuss this with their children and young people and have the chance really to put their own views on it. But I think in those two areas in particular where parents can opt their children out of, it can't be, there is no scientifically inaccurate.
Thank you, Peter. Okay, I've not had any other indications, so I think that brings the evidence session to a close. So thank you very much for your time. And just, feel free to make your way out now. But we really do appreciate you coming to committee this afternoon.
Thank you.
The evidence will obviously be added to the papers for the inquiry, and we can factor that into our considerations when it comes to the report. The only action arising, I know that I had flagged, I would like to learn more about the Summerhill project. That sounded like an interesting piece of work. If members are agreed, is there anything else arising from that otherwise? No? Okay. That's fine. So that moves us on to item 8 on the agenda. Can I just check if the officials are here? Officials are here. Yeah. Yes. Okay. We're ready to go. Is everybody okay to move on to the next item? Nobody needing a comfort break? That's fine. So item 8 on the agenda is an oral briefing from the Department of Education on issues relating to school governance. Now, I think we will come to this. We had initially requested a briefing on restraint and seclusion and school governance and some of the accountability mechanisms around that. I think the briefing is going to focus more on school governance. That may want to be. We may want to pick that up in our questions as we go through this section. But at this stage, if the witnesses want to come through, I would refer members. There's quite a bit of material which hopefully you've had a chance to look at. So there's a briefing note from the committee clerk at page 76, a briefing paper from the Education Authority at page 78. There is the Northern Ireland Audit Office Good Practice Guide on School Governance. Please take a seat while we just go through some of the initial bits. That's at page 154. We have the NIPSO investigation report, and that is specifically around restraint and seclusion and some issues relating with the Western Trust, and we'll all be familiar with Deirdre Shakespeare and the Harry's Law campaign that relates to. And we also have correspondence regarding restraint and seclusion in educational settings at pages 257 to 259. So hopefully members have all had the opportunity to read that material. So thank you all for joining us this afternoon, and just while you get settled, I'll just run through the officials who are here with us this afternoon, and if there's anything you want to add to any of the introductions, please feel free to do so. So joining us today we have Ray Caldwell, Director of Corporate Services and Education Governance in the department. We have Kim Martin, Deputy Director of Governance in the department. We have Nicola Adams, Head of Governor Policy and Appointment Teams, and Susan O'Boyle, Managing Inspector in post-primary special education in the department. So at this stage, I'm very happy to hand over to yourselves for any initial remarks or initial presentation. I would ask for that to be up to 10 minutes, and then we will move to question and answer. So unless there's anything you want to add to those introductions, over to yourselves.
Yes, well, I'll give a few introductory remarks then. Thank you. Good afternoon. We'd like to thank the committee for the opportunity to update you on school governance. School governance cuts across a wide range of areas in the department, and officials here are from Governor Policy and Appointments team. They deal primarily with governor appointments. The Education and Training Inspector, Susan, is also in attendance, and she'll be able to provide you with information on the quality and effectiveness of governance and how it's inspected and reported on. Departmental officials have also provided a written update on seclusion and restraint, and also the review of accountability framework. And if you have any specific questions on that, we can forward that to officials and they can come back on that. At the outset, what I'd like to highlight is the difference between school governance and accountability more generally, which includes the role of school governors, but also accountability against various frameworks, including inspection, school development plan regulations, and Every School a Good School indicators. I'd like to start just by saying how much the department appreciates the commitment of governors who are volunteers, and they play a valuable role in supporting the running of our schools. There are no statutory competency requirements relating to the eligibility of persons to hold the office of a school governor. Boards of governors are made up of individuals who are elected, nominated or appointed by a range of membership categories. However, representing the views of those who selected them is not the role of the school governor. The primary purpose of the school governor, acting collectively as a member of the Board of Governors, is to ensure that the school is properly managed. It delivers a high quality education for all its pupils, regardless of the body that actually appointed them. Parents of registered pupils at the school are eligible to stand for election as parent governors at the school as well. The role of a Board of Governors is to fulfil its statutory functions in relation to the school, and it is accountable for ensuring that its decisions support the best interests of the school and its pupils. Associated responsibilities, they are extensive and they include things like special educational needs, child protection, curriculum and pupil performance, to name just a few. Every grant-aided school must have a scheme of management, and that provides for the membership and the procedures of the Board of Governors and the management of the school and the functions to be exercised by the Board of Governors, the principal as secretary to the board, and any other person or body specified in the scheme. And the department is currently carrying out a review of the schemes of management for voluntary grammar and grant-maintained integrated schools. The Education Authority is also reviewing its scheme of management for controlled schools, and the department will be carrying out a public consultation later in the year on their schemes of management, and so parents and teachers and the wider public will have the opportunity to contribute to the review of this policy. Given the wide range of responsibilities of school boards of governors, it's desirable that members have a range of competencies, skills and experience to enable them to make a positive contribution to the governance of the school. And following agreement by the Education Minister, the skills requirements for DE governors were updated in tandem with the launch of a new online governor application portal back in autumn 2023. Governors can develop their own knowledge through training and networking with other governors at training and conference events, and the Education Authority delivers an annual training and support programme for members of boards of governors, and that includes training in the roles and responsibilities of a governor and how an effective board of governor operates. The Department of Education has also published a governor guide, and this provides governors with a wide range of information on topics such as roles and responsibilities, safeguarding, finance, the operation of the boards of governors, amongst other things. The school can advise the Education Authority, CCMS or the department of any specific skills or experience which have a bearing on the recruitment of governors to fill vacancies. And also the Board of Governors can co-opt non-voting governors at any time as a means to enhance its skills and experience. School boards of governors are reconstituted every 4 years when members complete their term of office, and they may be reappointed or replaced at that stage. The reconstitution of all controlled and maintained school boards of governors comprising of over 1,000 schools was launched in November 2023, and this is ongoing. Preparations for that exercise included seeking feedback from schools to streamline the administrative process to fill governor appointments, and we carried out a joint publicity campaign to attract as wide and diverse a range of candidates as possible. I'd now like to provide some information on inspection, which plays a central role in a school or organisation improvement and the raising of standards. It is also an important part of the accountability arrangements to the Executive, Assembly, commissioning departments and public for the quality of education and training provision. ETI undertakes individual organisation inspections as well as cross-cutting thematic evaluations and broader inspection work. The committee received a briefing on this in June 2024 on the development of the new inspection framework, which is now being implemented across all phases of education and training. And the revised model enables the delivery of statutory duties for inspection while ensuring that the work of ETI has a positive and sustainable impact on school and organisation improvement. The purpose of all inspection activity is to build capacity within the organisations inspected to provide high quality education and outcomes for learners. And there's a renewed focus on the centrality of the learner and an increased emphasis on professional dialogue during inspections, the use of a school or organisation's existing documentation as evidence, and a stronger emphasis on identification, reporting and sharing of highly effective practice. This requires staff and governors to evaluate their work critically, to reflect on the extent to which expectations are being realised in the work of the school or setting, and to establish a clear vision and future direction for the school or the setting. The new inspection framework sets out the indicators of effective and less effective practice in terms of learners, provision and leaders, and while not definitive, the quality indicators across 9 contributing areas can be used as a tool to support the organisation or the school's self-evaluation process. Inspection reports will report on the efficacy of governors in relation to leading the aspects of the school's work which have been inspected. Now, I understand the committee has also expressed interest in some particular aspects of school governance, and information on this has been provided in the briefing paper, but I'll cover some of these areas just very briefly now. Interaction with parents has been highlighted, and school board of governors who are seen to support the pupils send out a clear message that the pupils are valued and are an encouragement to the pupils as well as to the school staff, the parents and the local community. In the department, officials across a wide range of policy areas take forward engagement with a range of stakeholders, including parents where appropriate, to seek as wide a range of views as possible as policy develops. Accountability gaps was also raised. In further reference to the recent Assembly Research Report, we've noted a number of Board of Governor issues in relation to skills, its challenge function and its engagement with school leaders. Training was also highlighted in the Assembly paper, and all governors are encouraged to undertake training in the various areas associated with their role. As the governor role is voluntary and it's not seen as conducive to mandate training. However, there are policies in place which require at least one governor on each board to have undertaken training in safeguarding. Engagement with unions was also highlighted in the report, and officials from across the department frequently engage with unions on many facets concerning school management. A number of issues which have been raised to the department include governor training, recruitment of governors to include due diligence from principals, and I would ask the committee to note that the process agreed with the Minister for DE governor appointments includes proactive engagement with schools, seeking feedback on skills requirements and feedback on candidates as well. Governors to be made aware of their role and accountability responsibilities was also raised. And in autumn 2023, an updated governor guide was launched to assist governors in this important role. And we've received some really good feedback on this updated guide from governors. And then the limit to the length of all governor terms was also raised as well. Moving on to school complaints, and regarding school complaints under the local management of schools or the LMS arrangements, school complaints are delegated to boards of governors. Each school board of governors should establish formal written procedures for dealing with complaints, and the complaints process should ensure that complaints are directed to the school and the board of governors in the first instance. And if following this procedure a person remains unsatisfied, then they have the right to ask the Public Services Ombudsman to consider unresolved complaints about maladministration. Moving on, the department has the power under the Education and Libraries NI Order 2003 to make regulations that provide for the removal and replacement of a board of governors that is failing to provide effective leadership. Under the instruction of the Minister, officials are currently progressing work in order to make regulations prescribing the circumstances in which an individual governor or all of the voting and co-opted members of the Board of Governors can be removed. The circumstances in which a governor can currently be removed from a board is set out in the Scheme of Management for Schools. And this applies only in limited circumstances where a voting or a co-opted member is absent from 3 consecutive meetings of the board or for 6 months consecutively. If a member subsequently becomes an employee of the school, or a member is subsequently convicted of an offence and sentenced by a court, or if a member subsequently becomes bankrupt. So thank you for listening, and we're very happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you very much for that. So the first thing I'm going to ask is probably it's not on governance specifically, and I just wanted to flag it. We had as a committee approached for a briefing on governance, and that's been an issue, but also on restraint and seclusion quite specifically, and I think members were anticipating that, so I just wanted to check why it was felt that wasn't possible to provide the briefing on restraint and seclusion alongside the governance material in terms of a more detailed look at what exactly is happening in that space. The response to the NIPSO report and as well would have been relevant.
Yes. So I think officials have provided a short update on that. They are happy to come back to the committee, but I think they were waiting until there was a further update to provide you with. So we've advised the officials, and they're happy to come back when there is a substantive update to provide to you. But we will feed that back to them.
I think if it could be emphasised, we are definitely very keen to hear on that. But obviously, I know there is the task and finish group that has been established, and we are very keen to get an idea of what even the scope of that group is, what are the issues that it's looking at, who are the stakeholders who are involved. I felt there was more information maybe we could have got to get a sense of even what is the nature of that work that's being undertaken. It just felt we maybe didn't get maybe as much detail as we might have expected on that. And again, in terms of actions on the Western Trust and the engagement with them around follow-up, because there's a lot of EA trust interaction issues are raised by the NIPSO report. I think we would have maybe liked a little more detail, but appreciate it.
Just to reassure you, Chair, we can certainly take that back and arrange for a briefing at another stage. Really, the request came through in relation to governance policy and appointments and issues around school governance. That was really the focus of today's session.
And if there's and restraint and seclusion. But I mean, look, if there's been any crossed wires on that basis, we'll happy to move on. But in terms of governance, and you're right, the committee has considered the issue of governance on a number of occasions, and it has arisen really from members' individual contacts, from parents who are maybe trying to navigate issues with a school, and also from formal approaches from certain groups of parents who are seeking to raise issues of concern around particular settings. So no interest in airing any specific cases here. I don't consider that would be appropriate. But my sense, certainly from our engagement on this, that often parents can find themselves in a position where they raise an issue, it moves into formal complaint, the direction is then to go to NIPSO, and that the department really sits very much outside of that process. Even when formal contact is made by an elected representative or by the parent themselves, the department will always direct back to that's the process. But often parents find they don't get redress through the complaints process, and NIPSO will often say if there isn't an individual issue of complaint where a child or a parent has been directly impacted on a specific decision that has been taken, that NIPSO won't take that on. The issues that we would hear concern about is maybe concerns about an emerging culture in a school, or issues around how parents are engaged with, or issues of the ethos of the school, whatever it might be that are causing issues. NIPSO will often not engage in those because they are viewed as issues of sort of wider school policy for the board. And also the department won't. The department doesn't seem to really have an appetite to want to hear more. Can we see what's happening in this school? So I wonder if you could speak to that in terms of that sense that parents feel that despite everything you've said, that there remains, and that phrase is, an accountability gap where they feel that there are maybe standards to which other areas of public bodies would be held to a different standard. Schools can operate largely quite independently in many cases. So it's really just to sense what's your feeling in that department? Is there work being undertaken to try and address that?
If I maybe pick up on that initially, Chair. So you're quite right. The department doesn't have a role in investigating, if you like, individual complaints against a school. That role sits with the Board of Governors. But we would regularly receive complaints into the department from parents or others about individual schools, and the response is usually to refer that parent or member of the public back to operate through due process and through the school's complaints procedure. And I think the importance of following the school's complaints procedure, that is important, because in the event where the complaint escalated and went to the Ombudsman, then that due process needs to be followed. Now, I would caveat that to say that there are instances when a complaint is received by the department, or indeed could be received through the Education and Training Inspectorate, where the department would deem that it meets its whistleblowing criteria, and that would be dealt with under the auspices of the department's whistle-blowing policy. So that would include, maybe complaints around safeguarding would be picked up, and that could lead to a requested inspection of safeguarding in the school through the Education and Training Inspectorate. If there was concerns raised, for example, around fraud or misappropriation of finances and so on, those types of issues could be picked up. And if there are more general issues that came through, indeed they could be passed on to the Education and Training Inspectorate to follow up on. But primarily, individual complaints are dealt with through the boards of governor and the process within the school.
And I want to be clear, anything I say in follow up to this, I am not wanting to create an impression that either myself or the committee have a view that schools are routinely behaving in inappropriate ways. Schools do a fantastic job and deliver amazing services under a lot of pressure at the moment, so I want to make that very clear. I'm not trying to suggest that there's some sort of endemic culture of schools sort of acting as inappropriately in this space, but we do receive a substantial amount of contact from parents who don't feel they can get redress. So I'm wanting to get a sense, to the department, at what point does a red flag come up for the department where actually we're getting enough correspondence on a particular setting where something feels that it's not right, the complaints process is not resolving it? Does the department have any sort of threshold at which point we actually do want to know what's happening in this individual school? And we will ask, because there are powers. I mean, you referenced the education order. I can't remember which year it relates to. There are so many of them. But where the department does have the power to direct a board of governors. But it wasn't clear in what context it would ever actually do that. So I'm just wanting to get a sense of at what point would the department become activated.
I think if I could maybe bring Susan in on this point around inspection, where the views of parents are sought more broadly around the types of issues that you're alluding to, Chair. Susan, do you want to?
Absolutely. Ray, whenever we are inspecting schools, there are parental questionnaires. There's also the opportunity for parental focus groups to discuss with groups of inspectors elements of the provision for their children in schools. We also more widely, as Ray has suggested, speak with parental focus groups or speak with parents through a range of means in evaluations that we carry out as well as just inspections. So we would engage with parents on quite a wide forum and have done so over the past 9 months. If there is particular queries, and we would, as Ray has suggested, get particular queries that come directly into the inspection services team for the attention of ETI. Again, we have not the powers, and it's not our statutory function to investigate, but if there are concerns raised, we do liaise with the department and sometimes internal audit, and a district inspector will make a visit to the school just to follow up and have a discussion, because 9 times out of 10 the school will be aware of these issues, but it is not an investigation because that is not within our remit. But that would be quite regular. But on a broad basis, we do engage with parents on quite a wide forum in every inspection, and also through our evaluations.
And maybe if I could just add to that, depending on the circumstance or situation, there might be further advice or support that the Education Authority could also provide as well in certain circumstances, whether that's training or offering advice, as I said, just depending on whatever the particular matter is.
I'll ask a further question then. Again, it came up in your briefing. So why doesn't the department capture data on complaints that come into schools?
That is certainly something that the department could consider. I know that NIPSO had, when NIPSO came into the department to brief us a number of months ago, it was something that they had mentioned. So it is something certainly that the department could consider moving forward.
Just conscious that really the only data that you will have will be what NIPSO provides you with. So that's really complaints that reach quite a high level, quite a high threshold for NIPSO to take them. So you have no real sense of what, be it either complaints from staff, because I'm assuming if there was an employment dispute, you could complain to the Board of Governors around that, but also primarily from parents. You really don't have a sense on what the issues might be and what issues are maybe routinely being raised with an individual school but never coming onto your radar. It feels to me there's a big data collection gap there that even if you're wanting to make sure that schools are complying with all the good practice that you would want them to, and again I emphasise vast majority do, is that something that you would be open to looking at?
On a daily operational level, that is something that ETI would be capturing when they're out actually in the school. I'm not sure if there's anything more that you wanted to say about that, but back to your specific question about whether we collect data. At the minute, no, we don't, but certainly we can take those comments back to the department and feed them back to the relevant area who would be responsible for that. Would
be helpful. One last question, and it's just, we had Parenting Focus in before, and they were speaking to the RSE inquiry, but some of the briefing that we received from the RAISE service here did sort of widen out beyond governance into just parental engagement, and there doesn't seem to be any sort of formal strategy to enable parents to engage with their schools locally. And one of the things that stuck out to me in that briefing from RAISE was the parent council model in Scotland, and actually that really seemed to have delivered some quite effective outcomes in terms of actually persuading their local authority to release substantial additional investment in a particular area. Is there any work ongoing around trying to find ways to really meaningfully give parents a voice in terms of the education system in Northern Ireland?
Yeah, if I maybe pick up on that point first, and then I'll maybe bring Susan in as well from an inspection point of view. So there are formal requirements around engagement with parents and consultation that boards of governors will follow and quite often delegate to the leadership of the school under routine day-to-day business. So the examples would include consultation around identifying priorities for the school. There's a requirement to consult on the school development plan. You'll be aware from previous briefings there's a requirement to consult on developing policies, including, for example, RSE. Safeguarding policies would be consulted on, and generally seeking the views, and that can take a variety of forms. Quite often, as I was saying, it can be delegated to the leadership and staff within the school. All boards of governors have parental elected representatives who represent the views of the parents and can raise those within the school governing body, and then there are the findings from ETI whenever they would look at that specifically. And Susan, do you want to say a little bit more about parental engagement?
Absolutely. Whenever, as I said at the previous question, we at every inspection send out our parental questionnaires, and we feed those back to representatives of the Board of Governors as well as the school staff, mainly the principal and the designated teacher, if there's any issues that they need to take forward, particularly around child protection or safeguarding. Also as well, I just want to highlight in our new model of inspection that we've run out now since term 1, the core question 5, you'll be aware that it's around 5 core questions. Core question 5 is really about the growing a community of learning, and that starts within the school, within the staff and the pupils, but it very much encompasses the parents, the local businesses, the local feeder primary schools, the local, if there's FE colleges, all of that whole community youth sector, and it very much includes the parents. So we are getting that greater engagement from the whole community. We've been in inspection and there has been members of the PTA, the school PTA meet with us. So we're getting that wider voice from parents during inspection, also as well as I've mentioned, not to repeat myself, but 3 evaluations as well. But it's that whole collaborative network element of our new model that's very much feeding into the inspection process, and it's capturing that parental voice, and then we report that, and it's very much coming through our new reports that we have published from term 1. You'll see those on the website about the questionnaires and the parental focus and all of that, as well as the community of learning core question 5. When we see boards of governors working really effectively, and we report on that, and we report about not the governors individually but the work of the governors and the effectiveness, we see high levels of governors involving themselves with the life and work of the school, but they are bringing the student council, for example, to their governor meetings. They are speaking directly to the curriculum leaders, they're speaking directly to groups of parents. It goes wider than just the parent rep that sits on the Board of Governors, and that is when it's working at its best. And in the main, that's what we see when we're out there during school inspections and we engage with all of those stakeholders.
Thank you. That's all from me. I'll pass over to the Deputy Chair.
Thanks, Chair. According to the department, it's the responsibility of boards of governors to ensure that the workload of principals and teachers and so on is managed in a fair and consistent way, so that teaching professionals can discharge their roles and responsibilities. I've been talking to a lot of teachers, and many of them are complaining that they are yet to see the outworking of this workload agreement. In fact, it seems to be one of the biggest issues among teachers at the minute, that they're completely overloaded with work, and it's causing great stress within the teaching profession. So I wondered, would you like to comment on that, or would you have a view on it?
Yeah, all schools are required to have workload agreements and time budgets in place, and they're put in place at the beginning of the year. Now, responsibility for that would sit with different officials within the department, so that's something we could certainly come back to you on in writing and provide an update on that formally. It wouldn't be a responsibility that sits across school governance within the department, but we can certainly come back with a response to that.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Sorry, Kim, did you want to come in there?
No, I was just agreeing with Ray there,
Okay.
sorry.
Okay. I suppose there's some data provided there in regard to the uptake of training for governors, and it seems to be quite a low uptake. Has the department considered any interventions that might improve that uptake, or maybe even make it mandatory? Because, you know, if we go back to the previous issue I raised, I mean, it seems to me that's one issue that governors might need training in finance, HR, complaints procedures, and all of those different issues that can create problems within schools. So, any views on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the figures that we've given you are for a 1 year, just for 1 year, 2023-24. What I would say, I think there's a couple of issues that are feeding into that. We would certainly expect a higher uptake of training courses next year. The reasons for that being we are in the final year of the current timeline for governors, so we're in the middle of a reconstitution exercise. Normally, under normal circumstances, there's a 4-year timeline for each reconstitution. This year, it has been, or this time period, it has been 6 years. Because of COVID, it was delayed for 1 year, and then in relation to Action Short of Strike, it was pushed back a year. So those governors have been in place for over 6 years. So if you times getting very technical, but if you times the number of training sessions over a 6-year period, that puts that into perspective a wee bit more. There are 11,000 governors in total, and the number of training sessions this year are 2,500. So those two elements play into those figures.
You don't think that's quite low?
Over a 6-year period, if you times 2,500 by a 6-year period, I would have.
Yeah. If I can come in there, Kim, I think there's a number of issues there. So induction training is offered to new governors who are appointed, and then there's mandatory training around safeguarding, which is on a cycle for governors. Now, beyond that, really, the training is not mandatory and it's optional. There's a comprehensive offer that is put together through the EA, and increasingly that is being made available online, where the governors can access it at a time and of their choosing. But currently there's no mandatory requirement beyond those specific aspects, and indeed some of those will be picked up through the inspection process around training for recruitment and selection, and also training for the designated governor on child protection and safeguarding. So when you take the number and extrapolate it out over the 4 to 6 years, there is an uptick there. You know, is it high enough? Should more governors be encouraged and participating? Well, clearly we would all want to see that, and I know the Education Authority are putting out a push to encourage greater involvement of governors, and I think the online provision, which suits, maybe most governors are working and have full-time jobs, so making it available at other times we think will help as well. I mean, we can certainly go through the content of the training. I think you'll find it's in excess of 20 courses. 25 courses that are available. So there is a good comprehensive offer there. And I would also say that the Education Authority are responsive to commissions and requests from the department to flex and adapt that. I'd also maybe draw attention back. I mean, Kim had made reference to the scheme of management. Alongside the scheme of management, there is a governor's handbook that is produced and kept under regular review. So that provides a lot of useful information to governors as well.
In terms of inspection, can the inspectorate look at the competency of any board of governors within a school?
As far as inspection is concerned, Pat, we look at the range of expertise. We look at the governors and their involvement in the life and work in the school. We look at the range of subcommittees that's set up within the Board of Governors. We meet with representatives of different of those subcommittees. We mainly meet as well with the designated governor at some stage. We check to see and we get assurances from the school and from the governors that the governor training is in date, and we report if it has to be updated. And we have reported that on a small number of occasions in term 1 there of this academic year, where governor training has not been in date. So we look at that, and then we write evaluatively about the work of the governors. Based on all of the evidence available. We look at the agendas and any boards of governor meeting documentation that's provided to us as well. So we do. On the whole, in term 1, from our inspection evidence, the governors are doing, in the main, a good job, and it is a voluntary role. And we would always welcome more support for them. There is some support documents for them available on our website, on the ETI website as well. That is the ISA for governors. Whilst we don't use that in inspection, that's a self-evaluation tool that they can avail of, and some governors do, and we see them still using that documentation. There's also the updated child protection and safeguarding guidance for governors, specifically for governors, on the website, and again they can use that to help them with their own internal self-evaluation.
Can I maybe just add just a couple of points as well? So the Education Authority have also been using social media to try and boost uptake in participation in the courses, and they engage on an ongoing basis with various sectoral bodies and stakeholders to get their views in case there's any sector-specific courses that might be relevant. The EA have got received good feedback on the courses that are offered. I think it was in the range of 99% of those who actually attended courses said that they found it either useful or very useful. So that reflects the quality of courses. But I think everybody would be keen to see a greater uptake in terms of the training. But we hope to see that in this first year of the newly reconstituted boards, as we have refreshed boards coming on, and boards of governors are keen to upskill in that area. So
yeah, and I would also add that in many schools the governors will avail of training from within their own school, whether it's on a curricular area or aspect of the work, or indeed if teachers, leaders, senior leaders have been out on training, they will then come and report and share that training with the governors, and that's quite bespoke to the context of that school. So the training, I wouldn't want it to be interpreted that it was only what was available from the EA. Quite often schools will identify their own needs and facilitate either through another external or from within the school or staff within the school.
And sorry, just one other point.
Just briefly on this point.
Apologies, but it's specifically in relation to safeguarding. The EA Child Protection Support Service, they proactively monitor the uptake of that particular course as well.
Thank you. Okay, thanks, Deputy Chair. David, you wanted us to
just on the back of some of it's a very simple point. Just you're obviously collating data around what's being done each year. It would make sense to collate a sort of rolling set of data around from the body of governors that are across Northern Ireland at any given stage, how many have have that training or have relevant training, so that we know at any one time what that level is, rather than necessarily having to times by 6 get a rough idea.
So EA have that data and can provide it, so we can provide that to the committee. Yes. In addition to that, there's quite an extensive list of courses which are really good, so we can send you that list as well, actually. Yeah.
Michelle, you had indicated.
Thank you, and thanks for coming today. I feel obliged at the start just to echo a point the Chair made in terms of what our expectation of this session was going to be around restraint and seclusion. I guess I was thinking of my daughter doing exams at the minute. If she had a question on Nazi Germany and decided to answer on the Belfast Agreement in 1998, she would get no marks. There are people who monitor this committee who would have had an expectation today to get an update on that, and I know that they're disappointed that they're not. There are real people behind restraint and seclusion. It's not just a title on a page, who have experienced real things and real harm. So I think we look forward to getting that update when it comes, and I hope that it comes soon because they're waiting a long time on it. To get in, obviously a lot of people who, and this is why this perhaps has turned out the way that it has, will have had an experience of complaining to the school on the back of a bad experience around restraint and seclusion. I think the Chair in his questions was trying to get a sense of how things are now. I guess I would like to get a sense of where the department thinks it ought to go. Some of the things that you said in response to the Chair's questions were there are occasions where a complaint might fall into whistleblowing or fraud could be picked up, or things could be passed to ETI. Does the department agree that perhaps we should have a more defined process so that we know exactly where different complaints go and how they should be handled, and that would help parents feel assured that their complaints are taken seriously? I know I've had feedback from parents who've gone through this process who feel the lack of clarity now really allows for a system where they feel like they're just being ground down until they go away, that nobody's really intending to take them seriously because there's no process there that they have to work within.
I was going to say there is a specific process in place. So there is a threshold, for example, for whistleblowing. And that's published, and it specifically states what it actually includes. So if you have a complaint that relates to fraud or illegal activity of any sort, and it comes across our desks, that will go directly to internal audit to take forward as a whistleblowing complaint.
Something like whistleblowing is a very high threshold. So what I mean is the normal kind of complaints that come through will not fall into the category of whistleblowing. They'll not fall into the category of fraud or to be passed the ETI. So there's no process there, it seems, for actual normal run-of-the-mill complaints to actually be dealt with. I mean, do you feel schools can credibly, independently mark their own homework, actually independently carry out investigations? Does that feel right, that the school does that role?
Under the local management of schools, that is delegated to schools, and all schools are required to have a complaints process which is published, and that provides for the actual process that is in place.
Do you know what I mean? Parents aren't feeling confident that if they're complaining about the school's the best person to investigate that all the time. So should there be another recourse for them rather than going straight to NIPSO? There should be something intermediary there that can deal with some of the complaints that fall outside the whistleblowing and those kind of more serious.
I think there's probably two aspects there. I mean, one is the formal process, which is delegated to the school, and we've covered that. But also to highlight that, good practice in complaints handling is to give the organisation, whether that be a school or any organisation, an opportunity to consider and respond to that, and also to learn from the complaint without prejudice. It doesn't matter whether it's upheld or not upheld, that reflective approach, and it's important to give the school, in this case, an opportunity to do that. So removing it away from the school would be kind of outside that good practice, and indeed the good practice which would be set out by NIPSO in terms of how complaints should be handled.
But just again, it's just if there is an outworking of that somebody's not satisfied with, it just feels an extreme to go to NIPSO, and as Nick, for his question, there's only certain circumstances that they'll act, so it kind of leaves the thing perhaps in limbo. We'll not labour the point, but I think it's certainly a frustration that's expressed, and I don't think people are necessarily satisfied with things as they are, so that perhaps we'd hope that the department might do some work to see where that gap could be closed, because there seems to be a gap there at the minute that's leaving people feeling that the system isn't satisfactory in terms of complaints. I think Nick asked if the department gathers data on complaints are schools required to? And you've said that the department doesn't. Are schools required to hold that data themselves in terms of the complaints they get within their own school?
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure,
Yeah,
actually.
I need to check. I'm not entirely sure.
No, I mean, the department gathers information about the complaints that we receive.
Yeah.
We would need to check that. I don't want to give you a wrong answer.
No problem,
if that's
that's
okay.
fine, no worries.
Yeah.
I would say, sorry, Michelle, from an inspection point of view, I do think that is something that is looked at on inspection, Susan, around the record of complaints that are received to a school.
We wouldn't investigate, Ray, on any individual circumstance, whether that come in through the department or come in.
Safeguarding.
It's more around safeguarding. Whenever parents write in questionnaires, I mean, sometimes you'll see a bulk of questionnaire responses coming in on the one theme, and then maybe a bulk coming through in a very positive theme. But at the end of the day, we have to take a very rounded view. It may that we follow up in a line of inquiry, but it's not going to upend the whole inspection process. It's just that these can be discussed, that this is a body that has come through, and the voice of the parent has to be is taken seriously.
Yeah.
But we do not investigate on any individual basis, because that's not part of our statutory function.
There's no data captured to suggest maybe, and I know most schools are doing an amazing job and there's not a concern around lots of complaints, but if there was a particular theme or a lot of complaints coming into a particular school, there's no way to know that. There's nobody capturing that unless the school voluntarily tells you.
And not to my knowledge,
yeah.
Michelle.
Okay. Just in terms of boards of governors then, there's a responsibility around legal compliance. So I'm just going to pick one of the... I've had a particular interest in bullying in schools, so there's the Bullying in Schools Act. So I'm wondering then, in terms of compliance and people ensuring that that legislation is being implemented, how do the ETI and the department ensure that addressing Bullying in Schools Act is being implemented?
As part of the inspection process, we will look at any documentation that the school provides for us. We do look through the lens of child protection. We will absolutely look at the child protection policy and any other associated policies. Some of those associated policies that we may look at in inspection would be the RSE, for example, the positive behaviour and the addressing bullying in schools. And we will check to see, is the policy in line with the DE circular and also the legislation and the guidance and the current guidance. If it's not, we'll give recommendations to the school maybe to update that policy. Also as well, all of the policies are to be ratified by the Board of Governors. So again, it'll be a conversation that we would have with the Board of Governors if there was a concern there raised, or if there was an issue that we would need to discuss that with the Board of Governors. We have reported again in our reports under core question 2, implementing and achieving the vision. That is where, for example, addressing bullying or RSE or positive behaviour would lie under that contributory area of health, wellbeing, keeping safe, and the preventative curriculum and safeguarding. So we have reported in reports in term 1 if there are policies that are due to be updated or need to be reviewed.
Okay, so that's through that particular inspection of a school, but would you know now how many schools are complying with that legislation? Would you know how many people have an anti-bullying policy in place?
Not other than the schools that have been inspected. District inspectors will engage with their schools as well, but we would not keep a central record of how many schools have that updated or all of their policies updated. That's maybe something for policy colleagues in DE or maybe possibly EA.
Yeah, so you can't really, in terms of that piece of legislation, that's one example, be confident that schools are actually complying with that until the point
of inspection.
Yeah, and do we feel that's adequate?
Well, that would be the same across most areas. That the compliance isn't policed by the department, but clearly where there are statutory requirements, they're articulated and shared and brought to the attention of governors, and they would be reflected within the scheme of management and indeed within the governor handbook. So the expectations and the requirements around that are very clear.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess what we're really asking is, would schools choose to not comply with statutory requirements that are set out in both. And, I think that's a different question.
But I guess it's just trying to understand the landscape we have now, that there's legislation people literally right now could not be complying with it, and we've no visibility of that other than through an inspection. So in terms of then that legislation across the piece, it just feels like a gap in our knowledge we perhaps should think about closing. If you have legislation, there's an expectation that it will be complied with. That's my view on that.
Thanks, Michelle. I mean, if I could just come in there, I mean, I think, and again, I want to emphasise, not in any way trying to paint a picture of, of widespread activity from schools that's not complying with their legal duties. I've already declared at the start of the meeting, I sit on a board of governors, and I know how dedicated governors are and the hard work that goes in every school across the board. But I suppose it is just that there seems to be a lot that we don't know. And if there was one example of very bad practice and it didn't happen to fall under an inspection cycle, I can't ask the ETI to be out at every school every day. It's not reasonable. And I know, that the new inspection regime has been very well received. I suppose it is just that if there's anything we can put in place to make sure we do know on the really important stuff. And I would suggest that, the bullying in schools is one where there doesn't seem to be a lot of clarity around how that act is really being implemented in terms of monitoring. And I would suggest also in terms of just that, maybe a wee bit more detailed monitoring around complaints. I think that's really what's coming through for me in the evidence session. And it's not about bashing schools, because we know the hard work they do, but they are also institutions that receive substantial amounts of public money, and we need to make sure they're, in every case, they're complying with their statutory duties. Cathy, you had indicated next.
Thanks very much, Chair. Apologies, my internet seems to be sketchy. My rural broadband isn't holding up here at all. So apologies if anything I do discuss has been asked, because I did drop out there for a bit. But look, I don't want to go over what's already been said by Michelle and by the Chair, but it is disappointing that we're not getting the update, I suppose, that we were expecting today. But I wanted to ask something around, it's an issue it's come up time and again whenever we have been looking into the cost of school uniforms and the policy and the guidance around that. What was coming up time and again was parents under pressure around voluntary contributions in schools. And I was just wondering, is there any guidance? Is this something that department's aware of? Is there any guidance for school governors on this?
Good question, and I don't have the answer for you, Cathy. I'm sorry, unless anybody else here does, and it's one that we can take back. I'm sorry, I don't have an answer on that.
Okay.
I'll speak to my finance colleagues in the department to see if they can provide any advice on that.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. It's just something that's been, that's come up, and it's something the parents have raised with us around, an additional cost for them. I know it's a voluntary contribution, but just if there's any policy on that would be great. Something else then, you did mention around, how there's a balanced representation and things like that on boards of governors. We've now have a huge uptake in schools with SPIMS, and obviously we know changing landscape in terms of special educational needs. Is there any is there any support in recruiting or in getting boards of governors on to make sure there's a balanced representation in terms of people who might have specific skill set in these areas?
I can maybe pick up on that, Cathy. I mean, Kim was talking earlier about the reconstitution process, and currently under the direction of the Minister, that has included seeking input from principals of schools, as well, what the representation, if you like, where the skills shortages potentially could be, to help equip and reconstitute in a way that's beneficial to the school. So it's more of a proactive step rather than a retrospective looking at what's there. So certainly through the reconstitution process. Kim.
Yeah, one of the things that we did a couple of years ago actually, when we were forward planning for the reconstitution, was to take feedback from principals and boards of governors and chairs as well in relation to the skill set for the board. and we carried out some focus groups and issued a survey, etc., to get that feedback. What they were telling us was that they were looking for a range of hard skills and soft skills, if you don't mind the terminology. You know, things like finance and HR, people with legal backgrounds, etc., and also people with those softer skill sets, like interpersonal skills, who would be able to challenge effectively, to ensure that there was as diverse and broad a range of skills as possible on a board of governors. So we took those skills and the feedback that we received during our engagement, and we updated the skill set for our boards of governors, and that was launched. That was approved by the former Minister Michelle McIlveen, and we now have an online application portal to encourage more people to apply for that as well. So that was the basis of the updated skills required. But one of the key things that we do is we engage with chairs. As Ray said, we engage with the chairs and the principals during the actual reconstitution, and we ask them, what is it that you need on your board? Where are the gaps? And we will use that feedback in terms of potential candidates and any gaps that they have as well. So hopefully that's a comprehensive look at it. We have an updated skill set at the beginning of the process, and then we engage with the school during the process as well to make sure that the Board of Governors have as strong and diverse range of skills as possible to meet that need.
I could just come in there as well. Sorry, Kathy, just to add that in best practice, as I've said previously, we would see those range of skills and expertise, but also as well we're seeing coming through that just the term one, and with a specific reference to the SPIMS that you mentioned, we're seeing governors sitting with that SEN responsibility or an SEN subcommittee or taking that forward. So that's really good to see that it's been taken seriously at that governor level. And that's supporting the school with the setup of the new SPIM.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Kathy. Peter, you had indicated next.
Thanks very much, Chair. Thanks very much for your evidence this afternoon, folks. Certainly the role of school governors, it can be quite onerous and time consuming. My question really is around how many governors do we need and how hard is it to recruit them? And I know there's a number of sources of recruitment, but primarily at sort of DE and EA. So in terms of, because we've talked a wee bit about the recruiting of governors this afternoon, in terms of the requirements for how many might be on a board and when a campaign is run, are we getting enough applications and are boards of governors being staffed sort of competently?
Mm-hmm. I was going to start there. So we have just over 11,000 governors across Northern Ireland, across a range of school types. You're quite correct in that for some particular school types and regions, we will receive more applications. We would like to encourage a greater number of applications from rural areas. We find that, as I said, there are more applications for particular types of schools in certain areas than others. We have had a number of recruitment campaigns. So we had one for the GMI sector a couple of years ago, and more recently with the controlled and maintained sector, we've had a recruitment campaign for that as well. We joined with EA and CCMS in that to try and maximise the impact. Yes, it is an onerous task. These are volunteers. They carry out an incredibly important job, and we're very, very appreciative of the work that we do because it is quite time consuming. But we also recognise that people have a passion for education and want the best for children and young people, and they want their schools to thrive. And we see so many great examples, and so do ETI, of when governors come along with the right skills and experience and a passion for what they do, the genuine impact that can make in schools. I'm not sure if that answers your question or not. Peter,
no, it does. I mean, I suppose just a slight follow-up. Is there any areas of pressure where it's really tough getting governors for? Is that, from your answer, Kim, you're nearly suggesting that's a kind of like a rural-urban split. It might be tougher to get, to fully staffed boards west of the Ban, and it's somewhat easier to maybe get a complement of them in Belfast. Is that fair? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but
I think that's a fair comment. And what we would do, what we have done previously, is try to engage with the local press or social media in that area as well, to try and offer opportunities and let people know about local areas. We also contact and engage with the schools to see if they can put information and social media posts out on their local pages as well, to try and increase the uptake. Yeah.
Well, it's really crucial. It's a really, crucial aspect of school life, and it's a really important role.
Mm-hmm.
Chair, I have nothing else.
Thank you, Peter. Yes, I'm sure that the committee would want to put its thanks on record to governors, because we shouldn't forget that it's a voluntary role.
Absolutely.
And, it's not one you get certainly no remuneration for it, and very little thanks as well for a lot of governors who really do put a lot of time and effort, and it's for no other reason than to for the good of the school that they're on the board for. So I think it's important to note that. Look, I just wanted to pick up one last bit, and it may be for a future briefing if we do get to hear on the restraint and seclusion issues and that NIPSO report. You had mentioned the whistleblowing, and how if cases reach the department where quite serious issues are being flagged, that the appropriate thing would then be to look at whistleblowing, or indeed for the department to intervene. I mean, can I ask, in terms of those procedures, do you think in that specific issue and the complaint that came through from Deirdre Shakespeare that eventually ended with NIPSO, do you think those procedures worked in that case? I mean, should that have been one that was raised as whistleblowing if there were things going on that maybe needed to be addressed at a departmental level? Because obviously that has escalated, and with quite clear and serious recommendations arising out of that. And really, I think where we are in terms of the wider look at restraint and seclusion has come from that case. So is that an example of maybe where procedures could have been more robust?
I don't think we'd be able to talk about the individual circumstances around that this afternoon, Chair, but I think in general the process, I mean, we've already alluded to the whistleblowing. I would say that complaints of that nature are more by exception, and they're therefore treated as such, and they're treated on a case-by-case basis. There are specific examples of a referral in through our own internal audit where the managing authority may become involved, where someone independent may become involved, or indeed it could be a referral and a commissioning from ETI to conduct, for example, a safeguarding inspection or a specific inspection.
Are those
but it's on a
yeah.
case-by-case basis. So from experience, and sorry, from my own experience from working within the department, cases have come in, they have been responded to. They would typically go through our internal audit division first. Often there will be like a case conference, if you like, set up to look and, if you like, triage the nature of the complaint if it's deemed to be of that level, and action has been taken in those circumstances. But I can't discuss the specifics around and whether a decision or a different decision.
Obviously, I mean, with the NIPSO reports in the public domain now, so I mean, it's not. But I suppose it's really just to highlight, that there is a case that really did, it went through all those systems. But I'm pretty sure that the department, well, I know the department had very clear sight of that case long before the NIPSO report came out, and it's really just, I think it maybe highlights when, is there maybe a default in the department not to intervene when actually these things could maybe be prevented by a little bit of earlier, okay, actually this looks quite serious, let's engage ETI now, let's get them out. Perhaps if an ETI inspector had gone out in that case, we might not have reached the point that we did. So, I mean, I'm just really asking that, really stating it to have it on the record, but also, I mean, I would really hope when we do get a briefing, in particular on the NIPSO report and the ongoing engagement with the Western Trust, which I hope is live, that we'll get a bit more information around how we'll learn from that, not just about the specific issues of the complaint, but how does the department react when serious allegations are being brought to officials' attention? And that's really what I think as a committee we're really keen, and that's the linkage with governance at the department and where some of those gaps might sit. But if that can be noted for future, that would be very helpful. Okay, look, thank you all for your time today, and I think there'll probably be a few actions arising from that we'll follow up with. But thank you all for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So just while the witnesses are making their way out, there are a few things that I think we highlighted that we want to follow up on. So I would certainly ask, I think I would be very keen for it to go back to the department quite clearly that we really do want to hear on restraint and seclusion, and I think we do want to hear specifically on the NIPSO report. And I just want to put on record, I mean, Deirdre Shakespeare and her family have been clear that she wants this discussed.
Yeah.
This is, I think that is the bit to really emphasise. I think Deirdre's very clear that where things went very wrong, she wants the appropriate lessons to be learned. So I think it's important we do get that briefing, and hopefully soon. And even if I would suggest the work of that task and finish group around restraint and seclusion isn't complete, I think it would be helpful to know who sits on it, who's involved, what are they looking at, what's the scope, so that we can hopefully feed into that. That would probably be the main issue I want to highlight, other than perhaps, I mean, some of the other things that were highlighted, and if any other members or indeed Clark has any other actions that I've missed here. I think data collection was highlighted. So, why doesn't the department collect data around school complaints, and should it maybe look at how it does that? Does the department need to perhaps lower its threshold, and is that under consideration in terms of when intervention is appropriate? Cathy had referenced around voluntary contributions, and in terms of guidance for governors around that, I think that would be very helpful. I know on the APG and parental participation, we've heard evidence on that, that some schools, there's widely differing practice, shall we say, in relation to it, and it would be good to maybe have some guidance. And then there were some issues that Michelle raised around the Bullying in Schools Act, in terms of that's hopefully something we're going to engage with directly as well, which we'd hope to see.
That's a concern that we don't know.
There's a lot of unknowns, I think, came out of that session without a doubt.
Also
anything
the
else?
issue about the workload agreement.
Workload agreement. And can I just check, Deputy Chair, in terms of that, is that around governor's responsibility in terms of the HR functions in the school and ensuring
but you
that's
see,
not
the department
appropriate?
says it's the responsibility to ensure that the workload of teachers and principals is managed fairly and consistently. Now, if the collective workload or the aggregate workload on the staff in a school is too much already, then how does the Board of Governors deal with that? Is it a matter for the department or the EA then? So
I think that would be well worth raising. And again, it's a very basic question on that is, to what extent would that even come to the Board of Governors' attention? They rely entirely on whether that's being fed back to them, that the workload is too much. So I think that even in itself is an important consideration. Is there anything else that you want to add?
In terms of summing up, I suppose I find that perhaps a little bit frustrating. And you've used the example of Deirdre's situation, which has identified that there are issues here that warrant the department looking at them. But my sense from the evidence was they don't think there is an issue, that everything's okay. I didn't get any sense that there's any action coming off this in terms of these issues. And maybe it'll come to the seclusion stuff, but I just feel like even outside of that, you started the session by saying you've got inundated with people telling you about issues around governance in schools, and it's one of governance. So we're saying the schools investigate themselves and just keep our hands, a distance from the schools in terms of the complaints process. Yeah. And I think there's a first phase there, absolutely, that people should have the opportunity to respond to complaints, but where there's a necessary escalation, it can't just be the really, really serious stuff. There should be another recourse for parents to feel that they've been properly dealt with, and someone else they can complain to, if you like, about that.
Yeah, and I think there's an element to it that we do delegate a huge amount of responsibility to volunteers.
Yes,
and it is, in many ways, I think it's in people sitting on boards of governors' interest that the processes are robust and followed properly, because we ask an awful lot of volunteers to manage a huge amount of public money and the welfare and education of children. So it's no small matter. So,
protection for them, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, no, that's fine. We'll get all of that correspondence away then. So that leads us on then to item 9 on the agenda, and not a huge amount of correspondence has come in this week, so hopefully this will be reasonably quick to get through. So if I refer members to pages 261 to 280, and there's items provided under the table of correspondence at 9.1, and I'll just go through anything that requires a different action, and then we have some items in tabled papers that Mark brought to my attention again that I'd forgotten earlier, which we'll deal with. Item 9.2 on page 264 is an invitation from the Allied Health Professions Federation to an event in the Lawn Gallery on the 24th of February. Given our interest in health crossover, I thought it was worth just noting that. It might be one members want to note for their own diaries. Are we agreed? Item 9.3 on page 265, it's a request from the integrated alumni seeking an informal meeting with the committee to discuss the integrated education system in Northern Ireland. I'd be very happy to extend an invite to the integrated alumni for an informal meeting. I think we should also maybe give them the opportunity. We had looked at a formal evidence session on integrated education, and if they were interested in joining that, I'd be very happy to give them the option for that. So are we agreed that we reach out on that basis?
Agreed.
Item 9.5, it's correspondence from the Economy Committee, and it's seeking an earlier date, if possible, for our concurrent meeting with them. I'll ask the clerk to speak to it if necessary, but my understanding is that we possibly have, in between that correspondence landing and today's date landed on an agreed date of the 14th of May. Has that been resolved?
Yeah. So I did secure the Senate for the 2nd of April because we had said April, and that didn't suit the Economy Committee, so the clerk has just come back with the 14th of May, if that would suit you all.
We're actively exploring the 14th of May, so hopefully we'll get that one sorted. Yeah. Item 9.6, page 268, it's correspondence regarding the Minister's recent decision on the integrated status for the 2 schools in Bangor. So the committee had agreed at its last meeting we would write to the Minister on the matter and schedule some briefings on the issue. So I would suggest in this instance, are we content that we forward the correspondence from that, maybe update the individual on the committee's agreed actions on that, but forward the correspondence to the Minister for a response, or we can... Agreed. Item 9.7, page 269, it's a response from the Minister of Education regarding the bereavement policy in schools. I think 9.7 and 9.8 maybe got flipped in members' packs, but both bits of correspondence are there. I'm not sure it maybe provided some of the reassurances that Marie Curie, who initially raised these issues, might have been hoping for, but I would suggest in the first instance that we share that with Marie Curie and invite their response. Are we agreed? Item 9.9, page 280, it's correspondence from the Public Accounts Committee, and it's setting out its short to medium term priorities and reports on which it would be retaining primacy for further consideration, and that does include the recent NI Audit Office report on the managing the school's estate. I think we had previously expressed an interest in getting a briefing on that, and the Public Accounts Committee had confirmed that would be one they'd be taking forward. So it's really just to note, but I would add that we have got a request in to get a briefing on capital budget with the department, and I would suggest we still hear from them on that, as it continues to be relevant to our work, if members are agreed.
Sorry, Chair, I possibly should have declared an interest as a member of the Public Accounts Committee.
No problem, that's fine, Colin, thank you. And then in tabled papers, I'm just going to get into that pack quickly. We have correspondence that was tabled from the clerk to the Finance Committee, and it was in regard to budget timeframes, and it also provides a budget improvement roadmap and a draft budget 25 to 26 fact sheet. I think we anticipate more correspondence coming through in relation to the budget from the Finance Committee. So at this stage I'm going to propose that we note, unless members have anything in particular they want to raise on that. Agreed. Okay, so the only other bit of correspondence then, and apologies I didn't pick it up at Chairperson's business, we also had some correspondence tabled from the Belfast Wide Early Years project that the committee's taken a significant interest in previously. So I would want to just, they're essentially asking further to the Minister's announcement on SEN if the committee can get some confirmation around how their pilot might fit into the regional programme for 2 to 3 year olds, and they seem quite keen that actually that they could potentially be incorporated in that. and again seeking some further budget clarity from April 25 onwards. So are we agreed that we follow that up in writing on their behalf? I'd be keen to get that away fairly urgently, as the committee has really been very positive on its engagement. So the other thing is and I'll just ask the clerk to speak to this, we had sought a meeting to actually visit the project. And I appreciate members' diaries are under pressure, but do you want to maybe just give us a sense of where that's maybe looking at where it might land?
Yeah, so the chair and I had discussed maybe going on a Tuesday lunchtime, and he was just conscious of all of the pressures on your time during plenary. So I have engaged with BWEY, and the 11th of February would suit them if it would suit you, in the space that you would normally do your informal meeting time, so 9 to 10. They're based in Solace on the Ormeau Road. Would that be something that members could?
I'm happy to hear from members. I know that probably works very well for the Belfast and Greater Belfast members. It's really just that my sense was at lunchtime one might put people under pressure if they were in plenary before or question time after. So I'm happy to hear.
In principle, I'm happy to go. I just don't know what's on that morning.
Yeah.
In plenary. Anything else can be shifted about, but if you're involved in a debate or something that morning, it can be difficult. That's the only issue. I mean, I think you probably get enough of the committee to go.
I would be happy to appreciate Colin of the likes of yourself. It's not the handiest commute to ask you to do, but I suppose it is maybe on the basis, as long as the project were aware, they would have to maybe at short notice be prepared that there might be a dropout or two if assembly business dictated. So
I'm happy to make it work, the same as Pat, depending on business that day, but I'm more than happy to.
What time suits them? Because imagine 9 o'clock first thing with all the little
I know
ones coming
that is the other issue in terms of their
day
day with the kids, is that if that could cause any issues. But
they had previously said that most times during the school day would be good, and their kids are willing.
Well, again, I'm just checking for members online. Are we content? We sort of go with that provisionally, and if assembly business takes over, we'll have to. We'll look at it again. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so that's everything on correspondence. So other than what we've raised there, are members to content to dispose of correspondence as per the summary note at page 262. Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Okay, that moves us to item 10, and that's the forward work programme. So I'll just refer members to the draft forward work programme at page 285. I'll just pass to the clerk if you do want to highlight anything on that. I think it is sort of getting populated fairly well now. So is there anything in particular they feel you want to raise, or are we happy to?
So the minister is coming on the 5th of February between 2 and 4, and we may have an update from NIPSO after that on the Shakespeare case that has been referred to earlier today. And I'm just trying to contact the stakeholders that you're referring to me, so that we can line up the SEN sessions after Easter particularly. Middletown Centre for Autism then on the 19th of February is your joint meeting with the Health Committee, and that will be featuring the Chief Allied Health Professions Officer, Michelle Tennyson, and an independent autism reviewer. Obviously Middletown Centre is going to want to present about the work that they do as well, and we'll have an update from DE about the work that they do together with health. So it's quite a lot of content, everyone, just to manage your expectations.
In terms of the previous week, the research briefing on RAISE, is that officials just updating us, or?
So that would just be that you have received the paper information already in strategic planning meeting, but the researcher wasn't there to present it. But that is a bit of a movable feast, that one, because we have the task force in controlled schools and DE on attendance together with EA on reform of the educational welfare service that same day. So it may be that the RAISE slides a little bit.
Okay.
That presentation, if that's okay.
And I just wanted to highlight as well on the 5th of February, just in case anybody was panicking around that one, because obviously the Minister is in and that will be the bulk of the session. We're going to move the consideration and themes of the RSA inquiry on, as I don't think we could. I think we would be biting off more than we could chew with those on the same session. So that will be moving on as long as everyone is content with that.
Have we any sort of draft timeline for the completion of that report?
I'd have to look at that again, actually.
Yeah.
Have you any sort of ballpark figure? What do you think, in a month, 6 weeks?
I would have liked to think a month or 6 weeks, yeah, certainly.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we need to work on the basis that we would want, if we were presenting it, certainly if we were wanting to present it alongside any committee motion, I mean, it needs to be in before summer recess. So, you know,
certainly.
if the timelines then to get your assembly time are fairly tight. So I would think maybe the 6 weeks might be your sort of figure we're looking at.
Yeah. And are you,
with all of your assistance,
Aileen, are you, I presume, going to draw up a draft report that'll be circulated to the members? We'll have our say, and then any changes that are required will be put into it.
Yeah, so the committee had already set out terms of reference and themes. So the evidence that has been brought in will all be alongside that, and then sifted to see what recommendations or conclusions could be made alongside the themes, and then that will be for you all to consider together and fine tune.
That's great. Okay, so are we content to endorse the draft forward work programme? Great. Okay.
Could I just ask one other question?
Certainly, yes.
In regard to the Easter recess, sorry, I think it's the 16th.
I think in 2 weeks we won't be meeting.
Is there no meeting on the 16th?
No, or the 23rd.
The recess is 2 weeks, is it?
It's 2 weeks.
Okay, so it's that week and the following week. Okay.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay. So item 11. Any other business? Do we have any other business? Nope. That takes us to item 12, and that's just date, time and place of next meeting. So the next committee meeting scheduled for Wednesday the 29th of January, 2 p.m. at room 29 Parliament Buildings. I'll just leave the question then that the committee meeting does now adjourn. Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Committee Room 29. Sound.